Now, Frank Davey's book, Bardy Google, is composed entirely of the results of internet search protocols. And to me, what's most amazing about his book is how much sense it makes when you consider that, in fact, the entire book was written by Frank Davey's mouse. Frank Davey.
So, this is a poem called Digital Knowledge, and it has 15 sections. 1. Does anybody know anything about roofs? Does anybody know how to prosecute a 21st century pirate? Does anybody know what time it is? Does anybody know where you could get a free cell phone ringtone? Does anybody know how to get hold of Mickey James? Does anybody know how to set up multiple virtual hosts? Does anybody know of any free images? Does anybody know of a good place for speaker refoaming? Does anybody know who is a gay character? Does anybody know if General Abdel Aziz can swim? 2. Does anybody know anything at all about acting? Does anybody know anything about Boca Juniors? Does anybody know anything about a new version? Does anybody know anything about serotonin syndrome? Does anybody know anything about this doll company? Does anybody know anything about Yakana Lodge? Does anybody know anything about Robert Mitchum? Does anybody know anything about using gold skin care products? Does anybody know about applying for Cambridge? Does anybody know anything about Fred Hopper search engines? 3. Does anybody know how to unblock websites? Does anybody know how much is the tuition at Vantage Point Dance? Does anybody know how I can learn to speak with a British accent? Does anybody know how to classify M.J. Lewis's The Monk historically? 12. At one point she blurted out, "Mel, do you know what you're saying? Do you know for sure you are going to heaven? Do you know the risks of being overweight? Do you know about anatomy? Do you know about sickle cell anemia? Do you know where your data is? How much do you know if it is time for joint replacement surgery? How much do you know? How do you know lyrics? Do you know your spreadsheet is right?" 13.